For me, the Hacker Dojo was my first home in the Valley. And as an outsider, as someone who didn't work at another startup, hadn't gone to Stanford, I didn't know anything about the Valley. I didn't know anyone. I didn't have that deep-rooted kind of experience that other people who've worked before in the Valley have. So I love that. It obviously changed our path.
My name is Tom Harrison. I was involved early on in the Hacker Dojo from the very beginning, actually. I hosted an event called the Los Gatos LAN.
My name is Jeff Lindsay, and I'm mostly associated with myself. I don't know, I'm independent. I was interested in LAN parties because I was, had computers at my house and at my dad's office, and would invite friends over to have LAN parties, and they were always just, a couple of people. At some point in high school, somebody told me about this even bigger LAN party called LG LAN.
Tom went to Los Gatos High School, and Los Gatos High School has a place called the Outhouse, which is meant for like youth events, but it wasn't wired for LAN parties.
The internet was always a problem. Finding a venue that was connected well enough was difficult.
So Tom actually built these long cables, we called them snakes, where it was like a bundle of like 6 to 10 Cat5 cables that were terminated in a box where we could plug in all the network cables. And then you would snake that out to a switch, which to this day I still don't know how we got it. Like the legend is it kind of fell off the back of a truck.
I had a T1 at the house, but at one point at the outhouse we had a wireless dish on the roof pointed at Steve Wozniak's house on the mountains, and he gave us internet access to host the party. It's a lot of fun.
LG LAN was kind of like, I don't know, it felt very magical, and so I just started hanging out and going to those. Eventually they stopped happening, and it seemed like a lot of us became friends.
So we started Super Happy Dev House. Specifically, Jeff Lindsay pitched the idea to David Weekly.
We somehow heard about David's parties, the Super Happy Fun House parties. I don't know how it came up, but maybe it was just because of the, having talked about the parties or whatever. But I suggested, what if we host an event here? I guess maybe it was because David had a big house or something and he was used to throwing parties. But I was like, what if we did like an event here where we kind of get together with laptops?
He had come up with the idea of getting people together for LAN parties, but instead of playing video games, people would write code and they'd create things. And he wanted to host it at my house, and because the house was called Super Happy Fun House, he wanted to call this event Super Happy Dev House. And I thought it was interesting, and so I said, okay, let's do it. And there were like 12 people who showed up in my living room. And at that very first dev house, I wrote the first instance of what later became my first company, PBWiki, which is the world's first private wiki host. By the time we got to the 9th Super Happy Dev House party, our house was overflowing with nerds.
My name is David Weekly. I live here. I am local host.
Basically, I'm teaching myself Ruby, so I wanted to do something, that didn't especially have to be useful.
I'm trying to figure out how to put a close button on my embedded videos.
So we started rotating where we held it, and they got bigger and bigger and bigger.
We brought Dev House from David's house to the house I grew up in Los Gatos.
And it was really fun. Tom came in with a crew of guys. He took all the furniture out of our large home, brought in tables from Costco, set up all his gear. The guys would show up with their chair and their computer, and I fed them for 48 hours. We had a great time. They were wonderful young men. To be there at the very beginning of this and see these minds just working, it was fun to be there. The excitement of that was wonderful.
So by the time we get to Super Happy Dev House 30, we've completely taken over Sun's Executive Briefing Center, which is now part of Facebook's headquarters.
They had us in their Executive Briefing Center, which is normally where you bring in, you know, executives from a Fortune 100 company, and you give them the grand tour, and they have all the blinking lights and all the equipment, and they just opened that space up for us. As far as I know, there was no one else that did that. And we didn't charge admission, we didn't have registration, we didn't have kind of these normal techniques that you would use to size an event.
And I'm stepping over people in the hallways, right? There are laptops strewn everywhere. There's probably about 350 people in a facility that the fire marshal would have been comfortable with having there be like 190 people there.
At the after party, this was attended by 475 people. It was a massive amount. And it had had lots of press ahead of time, lots of emails, everybody knew. So we had good turnout. And around midnight, as we were wrapping it down, David Weekly said,
at some point this evening's going to end, and I'm going to have to all kick you out, or Sun Security is going to get very cross with me. But that's a shame. Wouldn't it be lovely if I never had to kick any of you out, and we could just do this 24/7, right, as opposed to every 6 weeks, if we had our own place, our own building?
Do we have enough regulars that would be willing to pay a monthly membership that we could rent a place where we could come and be our clubhouse, our hacking place to do this anytime and not have to wait for a party venue to come available?
Hacker Dojo started being a thing around the time that I was getting more involved as an organizer in DevHouse. And I remember the original pitch that David articulated to me for DevHouse was DevHouse that never ends. And that was kind of the impetus behind it. We were like, DevHouse is awesome. We want more DevHouses. We do them like once a quarter. But they are these short events, and we wanted a DevHouse that never ended.
And I had this vision of people getting together to level up their technical skills and sort of share that knowledge with each other. And we should call it Hacker Dojo.
That was the seed from which Hacker Dojo grew. And enough people raised their hands, and many wanted to know how much, and well, we'll talk about that later. Let's see if we can find a place and flesh it out.
The timing finally felt right to actually do something about it. And after about 6 months, we had incorporated the nonprofit. We had gotten that all together. We had surveyed a bunch of locations.
Yeah, it was 140 South Wisman. It was a stained glass factory. It was really beautiful.
One of the things that made it so great was just like all the weird rooms, because it wasn't just an empty warehouse. They made an office space, but it, you know, extended out, and there's kind of like all these different areas and rooms. And it's such a like fun, creative space. It seemed really perfect for it.
And it was down in Mountain View, and it was way bigger than we had really spec'd out. Right? It was about twice the cost and twice the square footage of what we had felt comfortable with. It was a little scary because this was way more money per month for the lease than we had commitments for in terms of members. And so if the whole thing went off the rails, we were going to be out some huge, unaffordable lot of money. So we sort of looked at each other at that point and said, are we really doing this? Are we confident this is going to work?
All of a sudden, people started showing up and, you know, making improvements to the place.
My name's Katie Levinson. The original Hacker Dojo was in a series of 4 warehouses, which were all together, 140 A, B, C, and D. Very original. The first thing I did for the dojo was we had these little offices. Well, offices, they didn't have doors on them, and the sound on them was terrible. And so I built doors for them.
I feel like Hacker Dojo started basically at the same time as the co-working movement. Brad Newberg sort of coined co-working, and he was a DevHouse attendee.
It's not a co-working space. It might be now, but it wasn't. I would not have put in those kind of hours for a co-working space. I'm not that generous a person.
We noticed that within a few weeks of our opening the facility, membership just about tripled.
There were well over 120 members by election. By the time we hit 500 members, I couldn't visually recognize everyone anymore.
But it was entirely volunteer run, and just the spirit and the energy that went into the sense that the community, after years of getting together informally once every 6 weeks, actually had a facility to call its own that was open 24/7. You'd show up at 2 a.m. and go hack your brains out. We saw the momentum that was building, and I think that gave us a lot of confidence that there was a there. That was tremendously exciting.
The people who were there were people who wanted to be there because they loved tech, they loved the future, they loved getting together with other people who had a similar set of values and a similar set of hope and optimism. Jeff was a big part of that. He was very much a cheerleader of everyone who he talked to. David was too, and they were always in there, like in the scrum, kind of, building their own apps, trying things out, showing things off, trying to get users for whatever it was they were building. Hey, check out my cool thing, like, here, I'll play with this, does this make any sense?
The dojo was becoming a concrete thing. Now that it was a thing that existed, it wasn't a thing which needed to be formed, it was a thing which needed to be grown.
Katie Levinson is the Director of Development at Hacker Dojo in Silicon Valley. Thanks for coming on the program.
We're located in Mountain View, California. The city has been quite distressed. We don't fit very neatly into any of the little check boxes they have as to what kind of, are you a school? Are you a factory? Are you we don't really fit in any of those boxes. And that's been expensive because they want, we have to basically retrofit the entire building to make them happy.
It was a very overwhelming experience. We had to make $250,000 in 6 months. Our 501c3 paperwork had not come through yet, so we could not yet legally accept charitable donations, meaning that if someone donated to us, they didn't get the tax break. And we had 6 months to make $250,000. And that was very stressful. But we ran a Kickstarter. We did a lot of sponsorships. A lot of people came out of the woodwork. We did a volunteer auction. We ran around in our underwear. That was a thing. It was a PR stunt. We did on St. Patrick's Day, we did a underwear run, which certainly got people's attention. And then as the press built, the capacity to be part of this evolving story became a selling pitch. Coming down to on the last uncomfortable number of hours before the deadline, it was in hours. We had a private donor show up for the last 58K. To make the deadline.
I think there's a certain personality type, which is what I will call the convener, who are able to tap into a community of people who are curious, who can't help but build, who can't help but learn, and want to be around other people who are doing the same.
Hi, I'm Ed Chaudhry. I'm the Executive Director for Hacker Dojo. I've always been a fan of dojos. So when I found this place, it was actually an intern for one of my former startups. He said, you should go check out the Hacker Dojo. I was a member since 2014. I came here looking for someone technical, and after connecting with the community and finding out, hey, I could do this myself, I actually taught myself how to code here. If it wasn't for the dojo, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So I feel a major debt that I need to pay back to this community, and that's why I help drive it now.
My name is Eric Mijukovsky. I'm a partner at Y Combinator. But previously, I was the founder of Pebble, a company that got a little bit of its start at the Hacker Dojo. The Hacker Dojo was just around the corner from YC, like literally a block and a half away from YC. And one day I don't even think we told anyone, we just wandered in, knocked on the door, just walked in, and were immediately greeted by a bunch of hackers.
Ed will go ahead and call and ask people to introduce themselves, quick little 1, 2, 3 sentence introductions about who you are and what you do. Those are little bits of gold if you've been buried in your computer and haven't bothered to meet people, or you're a little introverted and not willing to walk out. This is your chance to listen for folks that might be able to help you in your early course.
And everybody is having a conversation that is interesting. I wanted to be a part of every conversation. That's like a really magical feeling.
To say it humbly, a dynasty in tech, right? It was kind of this thing, this genesis of just a natural, organic desire to come together for people that are online to come offline and build cool things.
I had ambitions of running a startup one day, but I didn't have the tools or the know-how to get there. The Hacker Dojo became kind of my training ground. And it was awesome because you're surrounded by people who are, 10 steps further in the destination than you are, and they're always willing to help. And yeah, it was great.
When I first walked in, I thought it might be very much a bro culture or maybe unaccepting, but it has been just really amazing. Having this community and it just being so welcoming, it has really been wonderful.
Here's a great community. You find everything you need, and people are very supportive.
I found Hacker Dojo and I was just really excited about the collaborative nature.
Just being around a lot of similar like-minded folks who are trying to create some impact in the world.
And I think that attitude is something that you'll find in people all over the world, albeit in varying concentrations. And our hope would be to find those pockets and encourage them and help them however we could.
Looking forward, I would love to see that continue. I would love to see the Hacker Dojo as the place that's totally inclusive, everyone can join. If you need a place to hack, if you need a place to meet people, if you need a place to drink some beer on a Fridays, it should be that place where the best hackers of the world all know that they have a home in Silicon Valley.
The essence in such a critical time for the Valley, and then it's still here today. It still exists. I think we have to celebrate that.
Walk up, introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Zucker Harris. I tinker with electronics. I'm good with serial consoles. I know data centers a bit. What are you doing? That's how it's done.